Good afternoon, fellow members, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for joining today's webinar on what is Logistics 4.0 and why it matters. My name is Elsa Wong, and I'm the Vice Chairman of the Chamber's Digital Information and Telecommunication Committee, as well as the moderator of this session. We all know what logistics is. The spread of digital technologies, which are already revolutionizing every industry, inevitably has consequences also on logistics. Logistics 4.0 now become necessary to respond to an increasingly efficient production. But there are challenges as well for companies that want to adopt Logistics 4.0 to help us understanding the benefits of and offer insight on developing a better connected and smarter supply chain process. We are pleased to have with us today Kelvin Ko, Chief Executive Officer of BPS Logistics Technology. He will also share industry use cases and give practical advice on how companies can leverage logistics technology to reshape and enhance their operations in the areas of warehouse and supply chain management. Before we begin the event, I would like to remind everyone that your camera microphone functions will be disabled throughout the event. Please also do not record, duplicate, distribute the contents of the event without written permission from the organizers. Presentation slides may be shared after the event, subject to the approval of the speaker. Please share any question you have in the Q&A box anytime during the event, and we will try to address them after the presentations. Thank you. Without further ado, I would like to invite Kelvin to kick off the event. Thanks, Kelvin.
Okay, thank you, Elsa. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kelvin Ko. I'm very pleasure to share with you today about what's Logistics 4.0 and why is that matter to you. Today, I will spend around 30 to 40 minutes talk about the following points. First point is what is Industrial 4.0 and Logistics 4.0. And second one is the change of logistics after COVID-19. And then we'll share with you some of my view about the trend on the automation, especially on the logistic automations. And maybe I will share some cases. And then after that, we obviously will have some time for discussions and question and answers. Well, we are in the era of Industrial 4.0, but obviously looking back to the history, we're starting from the Industrial 1.0 many years ago, which is talk about mechanizations. 2.0, we're starting to have assembly line, mass productions. And 3.0, which is still, like 50 years ago, we already talked about automations using computer and electronics. So what is Industrial 4.0? A lot of people interpret Industrial 4.0 as again, automations and robotics. But actually, during the last probably 30, 40 years, we already very good at using automations in manufacturing. So we're coming to today, the Industrial 4.0 is more on connectivities, data-driven, and also cyber physical systems. Internet of Things and networks, which is a difference between the 3.0 and 4.0. The technologies of Industrial 4.0 is around how do we connect things together and how do we actually take real-time information to make decisions to adjust the manufacturing process. Just comparing in the old day or Industrial 3.0, we do have a lot of automation, but those automation usually is kind of preset. It is configured in such a way and working on a very repetitive way. Just like we're setting up an assembly line and they have to do the line and manufacturing the product, basically one by one, and they have to follow the things, follow the process. And obviously later on we changed to a cell manufacturing situations that is probably more easily configurable to change the configurations to manufacture different things. But now we talk about Industrial 4.0, we talk about more advanced technologies that can help us to react to the actual requirements very quickly and based on real-time informations and based on lots of analysis and analytic informations to help us to streamline the industrial manufacturing process. That involve much more sensors, Internet of Things or industrial Internet of Things, big data analysis, cloud computing, and 3D printings, which can react very quickly to the change of the requirements, and everything is around the Industrial 4.0. And the technologies we're using that is about connectivities. So the 5G is actually one of the enablers for quick and efficient communications. And the technologies about machine learning, artificial intelligence, and other analytical tools is helping us to digest a lot of data and helping us to make a decision on industrialization and manufacturing. And rather than letting the machines to run themselves, we are more emphasized on human-machines interactions. So it's like, what the machines do the best, we let them do, but that would be human intervention as well to make it more efficient. So that would be a lot easy way to interact with the machines and try to react to the situation very quickly. And obviously 3D printings and other more energy efficient and more environmental friendly way of doing manufacturing is also one of the aspects of the Industrial 4.0. And at the end of the day, we do all that, to solve a few problems. One is to improve the customer satisfaction. Secondly is to improve the time to market. We want to produce things and deliver to the user at the time they want and customize and personalize to their requirements and reduce wastage. Instead of in the past, we manufacture a lot of things, but at the end, some of them is waste because no one could buy it. But now we really want to match the demand, supplies, and eliminate wastage and improve the time to market. So this is all about Industrial 4.0. And Logistics 4.0 is obviously come after the Industrial 4.0. And from a logistic industry perspective, we did try to do a lot of things to complement the Industrial 4.0. But basically, we're using the same type of technologies that's available nowadays, like blockchain, cloud computing, IoT. Obviously, there's a lot of automations, robotic, big data, AI technologies backing us up, and in order to provide the Logistics 4.0. The objective is, again, very similar, is to improve the customer satisfaction. It's no point to produce some product, but when they deliver to the end user, it's already obsolete. So we really need to ensure people can enjoy the benefit of Industrial 4.0 by supplement that by Logistics 4.0, because we can deliver whatever the end customer wants in a timely manner to satisfy their needs. So this is the objective of the Logistics 4.0. Which is obviously not very easy, and this is a kind of big change to the old way people doing logistics. Because obviously in the past, manufacturing is one thing, but logistics looks like it's something else, right? So people manufacture things and then they send it by ship in bulk containers going to the warehouse, and then they sit there. Maybe they send it to the shop and waiting for people coming to buy. So the two things is relatively disconnected. So it's building something and then you ship it and fulfill it. And later on things change that people start to have a kind of, instead of push, they change to pull behavior, right? So they order something first and then the manufacturer do manufacturing, or maybe the semi-product, finished products available in the logistic warehouse, and then later on they will do some value-added service to do some customization, personalizations before send it to the end client. And obviously, that's very important for us to be able to shorten the lead time for between the ordering and the product delivery to the end client. In the past, for example, in the old days, when you order Dell computers, is personalizations or customizations. It's probably take a week or so, to deliver. But nowadays, if you order something which is personalized with your names printed on it, or a personalized colors, or different type of your cell phone cases, with some personal things pinned on it, you may get it a day or two, right? So, or maybe even hours. So this is the way the logistics have to improve in order to satisfy the increasing requirements by the client. And COVID-19 actually change or accelerate some of this trend. That's because obviously everyone is doing more online shoppings, and that's actually accelerate the behavior that I just mentioned. Now, there's a few things we should take a look on the logistic trend after COVID-19. So first of all, globalization is taking a backseat. We have been talking about globalization for a long period of time, and we all think it's a good thing, right? So there's no boundary in the world. Everyone can, buy anywhere from the world. But after COVID-19, because of the travel restrictions and the disruption of the supply chain and logistics, people suddenly realized we actually can buy things locally. And actually we should manufacture some of the things locally. Face mask is obviously one of the very good examples. In the past, in the world, everything is coming from China. And when we have a short supply of the mask, people start to source that anywhere in the world. And then a lot of countries, even Hong Kong, we're doing a lot of local manufacturing. So that's kind of reverse of the globalizations. And obviously that would affect in a lot of sense that, the global supply chain and the demand for transport logistics. And at the same time, because of people's not traveling, for example, the air freight capacity has been decreased significantly. Like in Hong Kong, in the old days, there's more than half of the air freight capacity is coming from the passenger aircraft. So once we have less travel, the supply for the freight capacity has been reduced a lot. So this all disrupt the logistic in a big way. People doing more online shopping actually will give them more time and opportunities to compare different products and do a lot of research and review. You can see there's more KOLs, doing business in YouTube or similar platform. They're more influential on people's choice, right? So there's more price sensitive. The buyer is actually become smarter because they probably less rely on the impulse buying, but they will do more research online. So that's actually drive down the cost. That's including the logistic cost as well. And as I say, the demand for fast and efficient logistic operations is also drive the lead for the automation. So in the past, deliver something in 1-2 days already very good, but today we talk about hours. We talk hours for deliveries. So it actually cannot be done in the old way. So they have to be a new way of doing things by a lot of automations. And obviously the risk management as well. So because of the uncertainty about the overall supply chain in the world, a lot of people will start to diversify, their supply chain and less reliant on 1 or 2 countries. So all this is actually complicated the whole supply chain a lot in the real world. And last mile delivery is actually very important as well. Obviously for Uber Eats or whatever other platform that you guys are using for your home delivery, they have improved a lot in terms of their overall IT infrastructures, right? And they do the matching and they try to optimize the routings and other things. So it's to make the logistic more efficient and transparent. And they have to share all the transparency with people, and they have to be responsible for any service failure. And all this is actually driving a lot of competition between different companies. and there's new people coming into this market and try to get into this local delivery as well. And obviously there's more workforce available because of COVID to go into this market as well. So the last mile delivery, we're seeing more disruptions, and I'm sure we can see more new things happening like autonomous vehicles, and probably there's more improved version of the self-service lockers and other similar things that will happen in the future. And this kind of change is probably going to be quite long term. So it's not like, okay, after COVID-19, everything went back to normal. We're seeing more people start to question about the long-term sustainability of the supply chain. How do they, ensure there's sufficient diversity in the supplier base, and how do they actually reduce the reliance on certain factory? So maybe break it down to a more modular design, so that even if one part of the supply chain disruptors, that probably won't affect the whole thing, so they can still diversify that to some others model. And also, the manufacturing base, as I say, there's changed a lot as well. So this is kind of long-term impact. And in this kind of environment, let's go back to what we call Logistics 4.0. It's about agile, so you have to react to the situation. So you probably don't want to make a lot of very long-term investment because you don't know what happened in 2 years' time, 3 years' time. Maybe there's more things happen which result in some disruptions in the supply chain. So do you invest in a very big warehouse for very long-term investment, or you make it flexible, doing less investment by doing more flexibility, or maybe even you start to think about more rental or pay-as-you-go model rather than a long-term investment. So this is a very big impact and disruptions to the industry in terms of decision making and the infrastructure building as well. But one thing I can say for sure is the logistic warehouse will never be the same as before. For a lot of people, warehouse is also, the impression is probably very dark. You see all the pallets sit on the floor. You don't visit the warehouse very often, right? You just put it there, maybe a few days later, you send things out, you just put it there. It's low value added facilities. That's kind of the impression for a lot of people in the past. But you can see in this slide, future warehouse that will be full of automations. There's probably more robot than human beings. Things are very neat and tidy because there's very high efficient operations, and also that's require very high quality. And as I say, we're talking about more piece level or item level handling. Instead of in the past, we're talking about handling of pallets and pallets of goods. And this is all in light of the change of this industry. The logistic industry demand very fast response. Just one day, for example, in the Double 11 festival in China, they're talking about billions of delivery orders in a day. And they also use a lot of technologies like, predictive predictive technologies to help them to plan the logistic. The news saying that, in the Double 11 day, right? So when you order you place the order, to buy something, the quickest shipments delivery is happening 11 minutes later. Yeah. So how can that, be done? Maybe there's some marketing elements there, but the way they're doing that is actually they have already predict, who will buy what. So it's basically there's a hot items, right? That you already do it and you put it into your shopping list, right? You're waiting for the 12 o'clock, the turn of the day, the discount going down. The first 100 people will get discount, so everyone rushed to buy that, but it's already sitting in your shopping cart. So they basically know that you're going to buy it, right? And maybe that's combined with your previous selling buying behavior. There's a lot of big data analysis, and so they already deliver, certain things to the delivery center just close to you, right? So maybe you just next door, there's a delivery center. So they already deliver things there. Once you press the button, they already pin a label and stuck it there, and the guy can just deliver to you. So this is the only way they can deliver this kind of services. And behind all this, right, is what we're talking about, the Logistics 4.0. There's big data, predictive, there's everything is connected, right? So it's not only the sales guy know that you have buy something, but also there's communications back to the warehouse and the distribution guy, and machines and robot already started work, in order to fulfill that. And this is kind of an example of, how Logistics 4.0 can work, and there will be the future trend as well. And the study is telling us that, there's more emphasis on the logistic warehouse automations after the COVID-19, obviously, for obvious reasons. And we can see that, there's much more demand on that now. And obviously for me, who is working in this industry, we're getting more inquiry after COVID-19 to see how can we actually survive better from logistic point of view after COVID-19. And obviously there's people already react to that. For example, this is probably a little bit old news, right? That's probably last year news. JC Penney, they closed down their store. Obviously, the whole US shut down at that time. Amazon is basically take over that store and turn it to a e-commerce fulfillment center. So in the past, think about that. You won't have a warehouse in a prime locations, right? Because prime locations for a department store, right? But because no one go to department store again, Amazon can take it over and turn it to order fulfillment center so that you can serve, the surrounding area, and which is just a change in the way of, doing business, but they're actually providing service and to satisfy the need for the clients in a more effective way. And obviously, this kind of concept has been around for many years, but why we think this is the time that we can actually see that's happening is because of, there's more and more technologies is available, which can enable, a lot of concept that we have think about that for many, many years. But now is the time that we can actually do it. And the problem we're solving is to provide a faster response time, high density storage, less rely on people, because we're not sure whether we have all the people available to work because of the country lockdown, and we want to have less human touch because of the COVID environment. We actually want to minimize the interaction between people. So all this is now possible in light of the technologies available in this time. One example is the autonomous vehicles. Again, we have been thinking about, to drive a vehicle unmanned, right, for many, many years. What's the challenge, right? We know that we have sensors and we have lidars and we have others things in the past, right? But the problem we're having is, in the past, one vehicle, they can have all the sensors, right? So they can see anything around him. But if everything is stationary, right? If everything else is stationary, obviously probably 20 years ago, we can already do autonomous vehicle without problem. But the world is not like this, right? Because everything is moving. And there's other vehicle working in parallel as well. Just like, if you have two vehicles actually going in different directions, right? So in the old days, because you're not sure what the other vehicle will do, so you have to slow down the vehicle or even stop the vehicle because you think the vehicle running in the opposite direction in the lane next to you may be an obstacle because you don't know what that vehicle is going to run, right? So that's why, in the past, autonomous vehicles is difficult. It can be used in the manufacturing environment, it's a control environment. But if you go out to the public road, that's more difficult. Nowadays, with the 5G, and we can have the V2X or vehicle to peer, vehicle to whatever, technology is available, different equipments can communicate. So, for example, if two vehicles now going to two different directions in two lanes, they can actually talk to each other. They can actually know, oh, okay, you're actually going this way. You know, you're not going that way. That's fine. So I don't need to slow down. Just like, you know, sometimes you pump into people in front of you, right? You turn left, he turn right. You turn right, he turn left, right? So you got stuck, right? So, but if you communicate with the guy, I go left, you go left, right? So that won't crash. So the 5G V2X protocol, if that's actually happening, that can help the vehicle to actually communicate with other vehicles or even other devices like traffic lights or CCTVs, other sensors, so that they can have a better visualization on what's going to happen, so that reduce the need for them to slow down, right? So just like, you know, you can see the small delivery van, if they have to go in an area, you know, if they equip all the sensors and they communicate with other vehicles, it's actually quite useful, you know, for us to do last mile delivery, because the last mile delivery, we know that's one of the most costly items in the whole supply chain. And in light of COVID, obviously there's other product which is very popular, just like, you know, this infection robot, and this is getting very common now, as you see anywhere in Hong Kong. And again, you know, this is actually saving lots of people time and effort, and obviously they're quite effective as well. And they can just determine themselves the path they're going. If they have no battery, they go to charge. They can actually also work with other robots, you know, to know, you know, you do this part, I do that part, right? So this is quite useful as well. There's other robot, which is, again, you know, this is another example of human-robot collaborations. In a logistic environment, it's not easy to handle individual pieces of item because all the goods are in different shape, right? So it's not impossible, but as I say, it's probably not that cost effective. So the way we cooperate with each other is let the robot, which is the vehicle, to help you. So instead of the person go all the way pushing the trolleys, we'll let the trolleys to go to the locations where you need to pick the carton, right? And then you can have like 10 vehicles working, and maybe you have only 2 or 3 people doing the picking, and the efficiency will be much quicker. So this kind of technology is quite easy to implement, and that's work with the existing warehouse, right? You don't need to build a new warehouse, right? So in the existing warehouse, you can have this kind of autonomous vehicles, and maybe by having that, you already can reduce your workforce, so picking people by 30% or 50%, which is very easy to achieve. So this kind of technology is, again, is relatively straightforward to implement and is available. Another one I have as an example is what we call a high bay robot. Again, you know, as I say, sometimes we need to minimize the investment, right? So this kind of thing is there's very small investment, because, for example, all the shelving could be the normal shelving. You have a tow bin to store your inventory, and then, you know, this robot will help you to go to grab it and take it to you. That's what we call a good-to-person arrangement. So it's like the person only stationed in the stations, and the system will know what actually you need, right? And then the robot will go through the whole warehouse and get the tow bin in front of you, and then your person just do the picking, yeah. And then you obviously will be much more efficient because you don't need to physically go through the whole warehouse, and the robot is waiting for you. So you basically working non-stop to do your picking while the robot is going out to grab the thing for you. So this is, again, is very easy to implement. And also there's a lot of benefit because this robot, it can go up high. So the normal manual shelving, because of people height, is like not more than 1.8 meter. So usually we don't go more than 1.8 meters for manual shelving. But if your buildings or if your headroom have like 4 meters, you're wasting half of the space, right? And the Amazon using kind of Kiva AGV, again, it's good to person, or what we call rack to person. They bring out the whole rack in front of you. They can use up the height up to like 2.4 meters. But the high bay robot, they can go up to 4 meters, and now the latest version, they can go up to like 5 meters or more. So if the headroom, they have more headroom, that would be more suitable for this type of applications. And this is another one, is the autonomous guided forklift. So again, every warehouse, you probably have some of this kind of mobile vehicles, and you need operator to operate. But nowadays, the navigation technologies is getting much better. So you can use that for like even put it to the racking, or even you stacking the stillage, which we just showed that before. It's also because it's very accurate, so they can do all this. And later on, right? So they're developing a 5G version. So nowadays you still need kind of computer to do remote control, but later on they probably will be able to do a 5G versions, which is in the pipeline. So basically you just have the machines, and all the intelligence probably go back to the central network. So you don't need to invest in your infrastructure as well. You just put the machines, and then all the infrastructure is back to the central control room. So that's minimize the investment, and that's make it easier or quicker to implement. However, having said all that, I would say, based on our experience and some research, there's only 5% of the warehouse have automations successfully implemented, which is, well, on one hand, that's quite alarming. Wow, I say everything's so good, but only 5% successful. On the other hand, you're looking at another directions. There's a lot of opportunity for improvement, because there's still a lot of potential for people investing in logistic automation. But the problem of the successful case is usually because of the reason I just listed here. So first of all, especially in Hong Kong, a lot of 3PL, third-party logistic partner, they only get a contract for like 2-3 years. So the principal only award the contract for like 3 years, and then they need to bid again, right? So they're not sure whether they will still have the contract after 3 years. So any investment more than 3 years doesn't make sense for them. And secondly, in Hong Kong especially, a lot of warehouse are rental, and rental is probably, again, it's like more like 3 years. So for that, basically no one will invest in that automation if the payback is more than 3 years. Except, maybe some company, they do their own logistic, and also they have their own facility, which is obviously maybe that's kind of the 5% we're talking about. But nowadays we have our eye of equipment, which is like 3 years and sometimes 2 years. So this opportunities happening that we can have some kind of more simple automation, so we can provide more payback. Don't have sufficient reliable service provider and technical expert. It's probably one of the reasons too. So we did see some of the project not successful. I would say because of, first of all, some of the people are too aggressive. So they want to do too many things at the same time. Probably less realistic about, the shortcoming of automations. So that's why we see projects that they spend money, but they didn't deliver the result. So there's also a hurdle for some other people going into automations. And also, quite a lot of costs to integrate with, have the system integration with the legacy WMS, for example. And also some of the old technologies is not flexible. So they are designed to handle certain things. And if the requirement change, it's difficult to change. So this is the whole reason why automation is not that popular. But as I say, the situation actually changed quite a lot nowadays. First of all, the automation that is cheaper. The automation, the few things I just showed, that's just like the Kiva type of AGV or the high bay robot, they're relatively cheap. They usually can deliver return within 3 years and sometimes 2 years. And there are people starting to offer kind of a pay-as-you-go model. This one is like, there are property developers. In the past, they just deliver the logistic warehouse and rent it out. But nowadays, sometimes they would like to do something like a service apartment model. So they build a warehouse and talk to the anchor tenants, and maybe they fit it out for them, including some automation technologies. And they're collecting rental of those automations in addition to the property rental. Yeah. So they make kind of the value of the properties higher. And for the logistic tech company, they also like to partner with those people because this will be more like a stable business. And obviously, we are playing a role like in the middle one is the automation integrators. We'll try to standardize the projects and try to make it as easy to implement as possible. And then we'll work with other people like, in some case, some investment fund. They're willing to fund the capital investment for the automations, and then we charge on a pay-as-you-go, and we obviously pay dividend to the investor. That's also possible. And one example is, maybe I go through this first. This one example is a project in mainland China. It's implemented by a company called Wellhouse in conjunction with a properties developers. So they design all this, but they charge the end customer on a per toll bin basis. So this machine is used to in a fashion industry. So they just put all their T-shirt and shoes and things like that into the toll box and for storage. So obviously they have a lot of SKU, and they do a regional distribution. So when they have distribution order, they will take the toll bin back and obviously pack it and do a distribution. And this venture, which is the property developers and this technologies company, they charge the end customer on a per storage basis and an in-out transaction basis. And with these technologies, they can reduce the footprint of the warehouse, or you can say with the same footprint, they can do business for probably a few times. This is 6 times more density. And have more than 100% overall efficiency improvement. So that obviously this looks like a profitable value propositions. And the end user is quite happy because they're not paying for the capital investment, they just pay on usage basis. So this is a very successful case that we experience in mainland China. And I'm sure we'll see more in the future as well. And there's other cases like in Hong Kong TV Mall. They have the visions to do automation, so they do all this before COVID, and we're helping them to do this. And then actually before that, we think that will last a few years, but after COVID, they're already full. So if they haven't done all this, they probably won't be able to capture the opportunities at the COVID time. Which obviously now you can see the share price going up, and they have turned into profit because they can capture the opportunities. But that all because they have invested in automation before the crisis. And you can see their order handling capacity is basically 10 times, but obviously that's not only because of automation. They have rent additional warehouse. The warehouse size increased from 70,000 to 400,000. That's like 3-4 times, but the capacity increased 10 times, right? And it improved order fulfillment time. In the past, the handling time is probably on average 2 hours, but this one is now getting to 30 minutes, for example. So it's actually a very impressive improvement, and has helped them to capture the market. Another example I'm going to share with you is a project we're working on. This is a project is in Junggano. Is a advanced manufacturing center. This building is being built. We just have the topping out last week. So I think this building will be up and running probably more like first quarter next year. We're helping them to do a logistic center, design build a logistic center for this building, which is a manufacturing center. So the concept is like, in light of the Industrial 4.0, the manufacturing will be very flexible, so they don't store a lot of inventory. So the tenant of this building, which is they will do manufacturing, will outsource basically all the logistic operation into this center, which is at the ground floor of that building. and we help them to store their raw materials, semi-finished goods in the automation warehouse. And every day they will send us a production plan, and we'll help them to basically pick out the shipments required and keep them together, and then send it to the production unit for them to do the manufacturing. So we're using light robotic arms, ASRS storage systems, pallet shuttles, carton shuttles, and autonomous forklift. So we're using kind of different technologies, integrated them together in order to satisfy the requirement for this building. We are kind of in the middle of installation stage, and then, as I say, building is just topping out last week, and then I think we'll finish off the installation and doing testing commissioning. It's probably up and running first quarter next year. Now, getting towards the last part of my presentations, I obviously want to relate the things back to what we can do in Hong Kong, and why we're having kind of a bottleneck in terms of automation implementation in Hong Kong. I just mentioned the reason, but there's also a perception that automation is very expensive, and it's probably not that approachable. We require lots of technologies, and we need a lot of engineers in-house. But what we're trying to say is our company is kind of trying to say, well, actually we can package that together is like an off-the-shelf product. There's things very easy to implement, like the pick-to-light, the autonomous vehicles picking, a simple sortation machine, a dimensioning system, warehouse management system. We can put that all into this kind of standard package, and that's probably not cost a lot of money. Maybe we're talking about a less than $1 million. Hong Kong, you can have a lot of these in your warehouse. But obviously that depends on the scale and size. But that kind of the concept. And I'm sitting in the Logistics Development Council of the Hong Kong government as well. So over the last few years, we have been pushing for the government to subsidize or support the local logistic industry to invest into the logistic technology. So I'm stealing the time for a promotion for them. So just a short video introduce this pilot subsidies.
貿易及物流業係香港4大支柱行業之一，對香港嘅經濟發展十分重要。特區政府非常重視物流業嘅持續發展，一直同業界保持緊密合作，不斷探討措施鞏固我哋嘅競爭優勢，以提升香港作為區域物流樞紐嘅地位。隨住現代物流業嘅發展，科技應用變得越嚟越重要，為物流業創造各類高增值服務，以提升營運效率。特區政府現正推行一項總值3億元嘅先導資助計劃，為第三方物流服務供應商提供財政資助，鼓勵物流業利用科技提升生產力。先導資助計劃以1比1嘅配對原則進行，即係企業投資1蚊，政府就會資助企業1蚊，以推行相關嘅科技應用項目。而每間企業最多可以獲合共100萬元嘅資助。有關先導計劃現已接受申請，詳情請向計劃嘅秘書處香港生產力促進局查詢。各位物流業界嘅朋友，記緊把握機會，踴躍參加。貿易及
Yeah, so I don't know whether there's this in Chinese, but basically it has been pushing the government to provide incentive for logistic industry to go for automations or at least to use technologies. And the rationale we're putting forward to the government is, Hong Kong is very expensive in terms of basically the rentals and all other operating costs. And the nature of that, because not a lot of people can own their own warehouse, right? So as I say, if there's anything that our eye is more than 3 years, nobody going to do it. So by having kind of 1-to-1 subsidy. Obviously, it's maximum 1 million. So that means if your project is 2 million, the government pay 1 million. That theoretically, if your original ROI is 4 years, is suddenly that become 2 years, right? So this is the kind of storyline we're telling the governments and try to push them to produce a scheme, which is they promise us this is relatively easy to apply. We do have experience for some other government scheme. This is, yeah, you can apply, but there's a lot of restrictions, and usually theoretically you get millions, sometimes you only get 10,000, whatever. But this one, we have kind of a promise with Hong Kong PC and the government that that they really want to support the industry. So I do encourage everyone to look into that, the possibility of applying the funding to take advantages of that and try to make Hong Kong's kind of more advanced on that. I will end this presentation by, I'm sorry, I still need to introduce a little bit about our company and our service, but I will keep it very short. Basically, BPS is a company. We have 3 streams of business. One is more on the constructions. I am responsible for logistic technologies in the middle part. We do have a little bit of real estate and investment business. Majority of that is around the logistic as well. We are the largest warehouse automation system integrator in Hong Kong, based on a recent survey. We have around 30 years experience in technologies, and we recently put a lot of focus in the logistic automations because I see there's opportunities there because first of all, the mainland China is already having a lot of advanced technologies. And which is very cost effective. So as I say, I'm kind of starting my automation journey like 30 years ago. At that time, there's only very limited people can afford to buy automations in logistics because the payback is like more than 10 years, 15 years. But nowadays, we really talk about a few years. So this is a big difference, and I can see there's a lot of potential in this area. Our business mainly in Hong Kong, mainland China, Australia. Currently, we're working on a few projects in the region as well. And we have been awarded for the ICT award for a few years, mainly using the logistic-related automation projects. So we think we do have a lot of experience to implement this kind of project in Hong Kong. So I think hopefully we can help you if you think we can be of service. But I would like to say we're not only selling equipment, we're selling solutions, which is quite important. I did mention there are bad examples of automation not being used properly. It's all around, we have to be realistic about, what automation can do and what automation cannot do, and choose a suitable technologies to suit your requirements. So this is all very important aspect. And honestly, we have good experience, bad experience, but we know what we're doing, and we are quite neutral because we're not a shelter of any logistic equipment providers. So usually we just understand the market and we'll pick the best partners, which they have the best product and most cost-effective solution to our client. So this is kind of our position. Rather than if you talk to a robot manufacturer, they obviously will say they're the best, right? But sometimes they're the best for some situation, not necessarily for every situation. So we're starting from more on a consultancy basis to understand your requirements, and then we'll propose the best solutions. And if you want us to implement that, we can implement that and even provide after sales service to you. All right, so that's all for me today. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Kelvin, for sharing your valuable insights and experience. I think really true that automation will be needed to cope with the rising demand for smaller deliveries and with a higher frequency of deliveries due to rapid increase in online shopping. So given the role that digitalization plays in Logistics 4.0, and this implies the need for companies to invest in technology. What would you advise to owners and operators that are going about such a process, and what should they be watching out for in particular? Should they start to get consultancy service first, or should they get some training from, knowing more about on the Logistics 4.0? What would be your advice to the owner and operator in Hong Kong, particularly those are in smaller business, not big warehouse? Yeah.
Yeah. As I say, obviously that will always be good to start consultancy, but I honestly speaking, I don't think a lot of people will willing to pay for the consultancy to start with, especially small and medium-sized company, which is very understandable. So I would say we will try to divide that into different categories. Now, first of all, there are people, they go into the market, or they want to have a kind of a change to their business model, right? Some people talking to us because they're working very traditional logistic operations, and they realize that, okay, wow, they need to change, right? So when you have a change, so you have to really assess the opportunity for using the latest technologies to shape your new operation. So this is number one. So first of all, find a window of opportunities to make change, right? So if you go, for example, if you're moving to a new warehouse, you are getting a new client, you're entering into new business opportunities. So get some help, obviously, you can always talk to us, or obviously there are people other than us in Hong Kong, they're willing to provide some advice. Obviously, that would be a chargeable service for a full consultancy service. But obviously, we will start with talking, right? So understand a little bit about your requirement. We can come to the site visit, have a check, and then understand your situations, and we can usually already can start to provide some preliminary advice on this is the way you're going. For example, order fulfillment center. A lot of people, in view of the logistic chain and the COVID-19, they're getting into kind of e-commerce business. So for that business, obviously, it's more like, you're storing inventory and you do order pickings, and then you send it to maybe a third-party delivery service provider to help you deliver. How do you do the warehouse? So this kind of thing is already very typical. So it's like, you don't need to have full consultancy. There's standard package available in the market that you can actually tap into, right? So you don't need to actually do a lot, but you can already have some kind of off-the-shelf product, almost off-the-shelf product, can help you to solve a particular problem. So for a smaller scale problem, I would encourage you to talk to a service provider to see what options are available, and then you can see whether you're willing to spare the budget for that, or whether you can find people that can provide a pay-as-you-go service. So it's basically a minimal risk for you. Yeah. So this is the starting point. Now, if you have existing operations which you want to improve, that's probably a little bit more difficult, because in Hong Kong, usually if you have existing operations, it's already very congested, right? So usually it's not easy to just renovate your home, right? You have 10 people living in a small apartment, you do renovation while you're living there, it's quite difficult. So every case is different, but obviously there's some more basic things, like if you have no facility at all, maybe we can install somewhere basic like rackings, mobile racking, that can help you to save your space, so that you can free up some space for you to do other things, right? So every individual case is different. So I will encourage you can seek some help from professional or the service provider. Obviously, you are welcome to talk to us, and we'll have people maybe get in touch with you to understand. But as I say, the government subsidy is a very good opportunity for you to consider all this.
Okay, thanks, Kelvin. We have a question from one of our participants, John So. He has two questions. The first question is, what is your view of the growth potential for 3D printing markets in Hong Kong versus Shenzhen to serve the GBA region? Maybe you answer the first question first.
Okay. Well, I actually don't know the answer for this one, to be honest. 3D printing has been around for a period of time, and we have been talking about 3D printings to as a substitute to some kind of logistic problem, just like, if you need a spare part, you just print out instead of, you manufacturing in Europe and sending over. I personally didn't see a lot. I did see limited applications. So for example, we built some model. We're starting to use 3D printers, prototypings and that kind of things. We see a lot using a 3D printing. But maybe some more customized personal items, we can see the 3D printings. I actually not seeing a lot happening in Hong Kong, to be honest, for this. And just thinking about logical thinking, obviously you will try to print that as close to your client as possible. So you won't print it somewhere and then ship it for a long distance. It doesn't make sense, right? So you really want to be decentralize that process. So whether you say Hong Kong or Shenzhen to serve the GBA, I would say if that's actually happening, there will be multiple sites because you can afford to install, more very close to your clients. So you actually don't need to have something in Hong Kong and send it over to western part of China, for example. So I would say, yeah, obviously from the cost perspective, China would be very competitive, and technology-wise, they're very good. Shenzhen, I would say, yeah, there's a lot of potential, but that won't rule out Hong Kong because why do you want to print something and send it cross-border to Hong Kong while you can do it in Hong Kong? So I think both have a role as well.
Okay. His second question is for logistics automation. Which sector is ideal to implement pay-as-you-go scheme?
Okay. Now, first of all, there's more standardized solutions because when we offer the pay-as-you-go, the problem is, if the customer go, can someone else can use that? So it's more generic product, standardized product would be very helpful. Now, I would say there are people in the market that bring pay-as-you-go for a pallet storage because multiple industry, the pallet size, even though they're not the same, but a lot of people is using 1 meter to 1.2 meter height pallet. So for example, if you have an ASRS or a pallet shuttle system, you can compatible this kind of pallet. You can offer a pay-as-you-go as a storage per pallet basis, which is very easy to implement. And if the client go, and you can obviously use that for some other clients. Another thing is like the order fulfillment center. There's a lot of people already doing that for kind of the Kiva AGV type of system. They're already using a pay-as-you-go. So those robotic company, they're quite willing to offer a pay-as-you-go because this robot, the small Kiva robot, like the one Amazon is using, is actually quite suitable for multiple industry. So if you're doing a supermarket and later on you change electronics or you go to fashion, this machine is probably useful as well. So that kind of thing is probably more easy to go for a pay-as-you-go model.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. And we have last question. In terms of talent hiring, may we know your thoughts on people management, or do we need to hire people with IT background to adopt the new way of the system in the Logistics 4.0?
Really good questions. I think first of all, I always have a concern about the talent situation in Hong Kong, because, well, if you're comparing ourselves with mainland China, it's much easier to hire, for example, an automation engineer or any software engineer in mainland China. In Hong Kong, first of all, it's more expensive, and secondly, the exposure. How many automation projects in Hong Kong? Right? So you can see, I'm always trying to get people from a few companies, right? Because they have the automations. But in mainland China, there's a lot of expertise there. Now, so first of all, I think it's important that we try to improve. I think Hong Kong, we need to improve the training and also encourage people to go to more technology-oriented training. And also we should try to provide more opportunities for the people for a better exposure. Now, with COVID-19 is actually adding complication there, because in the past we send a lot of our staff and in mainland China to our partners, but now it's getting more difficult. But which hopefully that the day will come that we don't have any restrictions, and then we can go back to that. Now, is that always IT background? I would say myself is coming from an industrial engineering backgrounds, and in my company we have a lot of industrial engineer. And obviously we have IT background and other mechanical engineer as well. I would say anyone with a certain engineering background, either IT, computer engineering, or obviously I always think industrial engineering is the best because I am an industrial engineer. But obviously all other engineering training will give you the sense of logical thinkings and how to process-driven and more objective data-driven in decision makings and logics is all important. So IT background is definitely good, but I think the new generations, they all have STEAM training, science, technologies, mathematics, engineering. This is a very good foundation for the future. No matter you're working on the robotic, AI, big data, and all the 5Gs, other things, right? So this kind of STEAM training is actually very important. So I would see, yes, the Hong Kong education is embracing these new technologies, and I think probably later on we can see more people go into that. And the Hong Kong government is also encouraging a lot of research and our R&D and science part. There's a lot of subsidy for that, but the environment is still not as much as I see, right? So you need environment. That means you need a lot of people, a lot of company providing technology positions, a lot of real use case that people can experience. And I'm not seeing that a lot in Hong Kong yet. And I'm sure they will come. And I obviously want to push that forward as well, and hope that Hong Kong will have better environment for the young people to have more exposure in the technologies environment.
Okay, thanks, Kelvin, once again. This comes to the end of the event. Once again, thank you, Kelvin, for sharing your valuable insight on the latest technology in logistics. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your participation. Have a nice weekend ahead. Thank you. Thanks. Thank you.